Has this ever happened to you? Your 3D artist friend wants to make a game and needs someone to design some characters, and you're the only 2D artist she knows, so she DMs you. And you say yes because we're in tough times and any job is a good job and you like working with her anyway. But the last time you made a character model sheet was in art class like 5 years ago where the teacher was kind of mean to you so you didn't pay any attention. And now you kind of wish you did, but either way you have to lock in because you don't want to make your friend sad. No? Huh. Well, you clicked on this video, so I guess I'll explain how I made this anyway. Let's start off with some housekeeping. If you're watching this, I'm assuming that you are not a complete art noob, that you know the basics of figure drawing, will understand most of the vocabulary I'm going to be dropping here, and really only need help applying that knowledge to make a character sheet, either as a cool portfolio piece or as something for use in an animation or 3D pipeline. If you want a more bare bones, back to basics tutorial, hit me up on Twitch or YouTube. Or let the kind people of this channel know that you'd like to see more of me with a like, sub, and comment. If you're real cool, you'll do both, but I digress. This tutorial is here to teach you how to make something like this in 5 steps, using knowledge that I learned getting my degree in illustration as well as my experience as a commission artist since. Timecodes will be available if you need to skip around. Let's begin. Step 0 is technically optional, especially if this is a self-driven project, but I include it because I love you. You deserve to be paid for your labor, and if you are here watching this video, there is a non-zero chance it is for the sake of a commission, particularly one in a format you have never worked in before. Most commission artists I know of either charge per character or per expected hour of labor. I prefer the latter because it's easier to wrap my head around, so I'll be going forward with that framework. Before pen is ever put to tablet, you need to understand exactly how much labor you will be doing. This is the time to have a frank conversation with the person that commissioned you and understand what it is they're looking for. In my case, I found that the people that commissioned me didn't quite understand the difference in between a concept design piece and a character model sheet. In case you don't understand the difference, a concept design is a drawing made in the earliest stages of the creation process in order to figure out the look and feel of a character. And more broadly, the project as a whole. The final product may not resemble the concept design at all, and that's okay. A character model sheet is something made later on in the process, and it's meant to be a bit more concrete, potentially even being what the animators and 3D artists will reference directly when making the final product. Before you even get to this point, you need to have a good amount figured out about the project, though this too isn't necessarily final. The people that commissioned me wanted something concrete that they could use for a 3D model, but didn't have much pinned down aside from very basic concepts. This meant that while I was making a character model sheet, I knew I would be doing some concept work along the way. With that in mind, we came to an agreement of 2 characters, each at 3 angles, side, front, and back, with flat colors. So let's do some art math. One character sheet has 3 finished drawings at a middling level of rendering. I'm not adding any shade, nor am I doing anything special with line art or color, but it's not a sketch. Behind those 3 drawings are what turned out to be 5 sketches per character, made during the phase where I was trying to make a design that made the commissioner happy. That's a total of 6 finished drawings and 10 sketches, which I estimated would be around 18 hours of labor. And I was pretty close to that in the end. I may have taken longer or shorter than you would have. You multiply that with your wage, with what you think you're worth based on experience and education, and don't be afraid to look up what other artists are charging on DeviantArt or Tumblr, and that's your price. Now that you have done your art math, you need to go directly to your commissioner and show them this price. Go over once more exactly what you'll be doing in exchange for this money and when it will be completed, and get it all in writing. Take screenshots of DMs, save emails in lieu of an actual contract. This is your contract. And it is within your interest to have proof of contract, lest someone try to short you. And I better not catch you starting work before the money has cleared, at least a down payment. And I also better not catch you giving yourself minimum wage. This is skilled labor. Any jerk can make a McDonald's sandwich. Not everyone can do what you do. Also, Out of respect for myself, I don't do haggling, nor do I like working with people that try to haggle. If they just don't have the money, I can always charge them less, but I always make it clear that they will be getting less, whether it be me having to knock them down a rendering tier or insisting that any corrections will be extra. I won't say that literally every commissioner I've ever had has asked for corrections, but it happens more often than not. When you work as a commission artist, you are trying to reflect someone else's artistic vision back at them, and this person probably isn't an artist. They may not know what to ask for and may not even know what they want, though may have opinions about what they don't want. And this usually requires a bit of guessing and checking to get through. I like putting a hard cap on the amount of corrections and when they can happen because it keeps time wasting to a minimum. Keeping corrections to a hard limit and then not allowing them at all in the final phase forces the commissioner to think about what they actually want and ask correctly the first time. Or else risk having to pay extra for the extra time you are spending. This is standard industry practice. I call it the indecisive tax. So, you have your contract in hand or on your hard drive somewhere, you know how much work you have to do, and you probably even have a deadline. Let's actually get started making the thing. Except, you can't go right into drawing. You can't just open up Procreate and start doodling without any research for the same reason you can't just hop into a car without knowing where you're going. I mean, you can just drive around like recreationally, like a middle-aged man trying to cool his head after a fight with his wife. That's a horrible metaphor. Let's just start over. I knew the general end point of this project before I started it. 2 characters, 1 mouse protagonist and 1 cat antagonist, both delivering the mail in a setting inspired by Professor Layton. I knew the destination, but I needed to chart a course to get there, and I am back to car metaphors. I needed to do a good amount of research, both so I could understand what exactly that prompt might look like, but also because I wanted this to look unique and good, and I wasn't terribly experienced in drawing anthropomorphic characters. And also because I knew I wasn't going full hog in the concept phase and that I really only had 1 shot at getting this just right. I needed a mood board, and luckily for me, I knew the person who was leading this project, Brixby, and had no problem bullying her into working with me on this part. We used a shared Google Drive folder, but there are all kinds of sites like Pinterest that could also work. First, I sat Quixby down in a Discord call, and we had a talk in which the basics of the setting and characters were settled on, at least to the point that I knew where I was going with this. She liked the Professor Layton angle, which takes place in the 1960s in England, and at first wanted that exact setting, but I talked her down from it. It's good to have an inspiration, but it's usually in your best interest to not follow that inspiration too closely. Even if you're not committing copyright infringement, no one wants to be told that their thing is just a copy of another popular and better thing. An easy way to avoid that is to look at what influenced the thing that's influencing you. Professor Layton has a lot of influences, not all of which were useful to us. I love Ace Attorney, but that kind of anime visual style wasn't what we were looking at. And anyway, Professor Layton, to my eyes, draws from other older sources visually. To me, it bore more resemblance to older anime, like Kiki's Delivery Service, Lupin III, or even Tetsuwan Atom, all of which were heavily influenced by older Disney like Snow White and Cinderella. The rendering of the pixel art backgrounds also reminded us both of old storybooks like Peter Rabbit and Frog and Toad. It also clearly takes some writing cues from Sherlock Holmes books. I'm pretty sure that's why it's set in Britain, for example. That bit of extrapolation later, and I now had a list of influences that was longer than 1, and it allowed me to extrapolate new influences that I knew would be in line with the vision, like The Great Mouse Detective. Now, maybe you're not like me, and you don't live with a library of random old movies, TV shows, and books in your head. Maybe you can't guess what may have influenced a work by just looking at it. That's where good old-fashioned research comes in handy. Whatever your influence is, start Googling interviews with its staff and creative team. Artists love talking about the art they like. It probably won't be hard. Professor Layton has a Japanese-speaking team primarily, and it really only took one Google search for me to find the Ace Attorney connection in plain English. With respect to the Holmes influence, we switched from 1960s Britain to 1910s Britain, and I started looking up information about male men from that time and place, especially information about their uniforms. I found a few pictures that I liked a lot, most of them from the Postal Museum, a Royal Mail museum in London. A bit of digging, and I found an entire Imgur folder with everything I could have hoped for, though hardly any of it was dated. In particular, I found these pictures of newsboys that I guesstimated were World War I era, which was about right for what we were doing. I also found this advertisement that was almost certainly from the 50s that I liked so much I figured it had to be thrown into the pile. They allowed me to lock in the look of the uniforms pretty easily. Now, there is a method behind this nerdy madness. Again, I'm assuming you know the drawing basics and that you know the value of having reference images, but just in case, the name of the game here is specificity. Quixby, bless her heart, didn't really understand why I was making her look at all these images at first, but I was doing so because I didn't want her game that she spent all this time on to have generic character designs. Generic is maybe the worst thing a character design can be, and it tends to be what you get when you're just drawing from memory. Avoiding this is simple. Don't draw from memory and take the research portion of the process seriously. Even if your characters live in your hometown and are normal modern people, go outside and take pictures of your hometown. Take pictures of cool looking people you find on the street with permission, and fill your Pinterest board with modern fashions that you think your character would be into. I'm not saying that your character can't just be a regular guy in jeans and a t-shirt, but I'm saying that too is a choice that must be taken consciously. Look at these 3 characters and tell me they're wearing their clothes in the same way. They're not. Even if your character is the type to not think that hard about what they're wearing, that too has to be a choice. And that might look different based on outside factors, location, gender, race, and yes, time. If we were doing normal human characters, I would say stop there, but we're doing anthro. So I took the extra step of looking up some pictures of animals, real and drawn, to figure out what animals we were going for, as well as what level of anthro we were dealing with here. Me and Quixby really liked the idea of a British short hair because they have these kind of weird, unique faces. Look at this and tell me this isn't a grumpy, middle-aged British man. You can't! I showed her some more unique mouse species, but a more generic pest mouse just felt right. So our mouse is now a British wood mouse. Though she wanted to leave room for more unique colors later on for customization purposes, so let's say wood mouse-ish? Having looked at some storybook illustrations, we liked the kinda just an animal on its hind legs look, but we also knew we wanted some stylization because they needed to be able to emote and get across some personality. The cat needed to come across as devious, physically intimidating, but not too mean. Higher on the employment and literal food chain than the mouse, but not the boss, so a middle manager type. Quixby also wanted him to be a bigger guy, so Mark Tone from Agretzko as a character influence. The mouse we wanted to be more innocent, but still a bit of a trickster in that Tom and Jerry little crafty guy tradition. The story, as of now, has him being able to outspeed the cat thanks to his skill with a hot air balloon, so he also has to be a bit of an adventurer. Quixby also wanted him to be really cute. So I started adding images from the Mouse Guard comic, and she threw in a few character designs that she liked for good measure. FYI, there are some invisible influences here, some smaller artists from DeviantArt and Twitter that she liked and threw on the board. This is a pretty valid and normal part of the process, but I'm erring on the side of caution and not including them here because, frankly, I don't have sources for all of them, and even if I did, I don't want it to be a whole, you reposted my art argument thing. Thank you. So, you have a mood board, some notes. You just did the type of research you probably thought you wouldn't have to do when you got an art degree. You can finally start drawing now. Right? Right? Yes, you can start drawing now. I'm messing with you. Before you draw, you gotta draw so you know what you're going to be drawing. Wait, sketching. Hopefully you know how to sketch because this section will be brief. Sketching is how you are going to arrive at the final design before you actually commit the final to paper, or tablet. I like to imagine my sketches almost like a shark circling its prey. I'm doing pass after pass to eventually arrive at bullseye. I don't worry about these ones being pretty. If I wasn't making this video, these probably wouldn't see the light of day. When they start looking pretty, I start showing them to the commissioner because that's when corrections happen. The uniform was more or less right at the first go. This was true for both the characters, but the face started off not looking British short hair enough. The second one went too far in the other direction. The third, she said, was just right. We bushy up his tail and he's looking good. The mouse was a bit harder in that, Quickspeed, I'm gonna call you out a bit. She didn't know what she was asking for and asked for a very cute character at first, only to kind of regret it later and ask for something a bit more realistic. PSA, I'm only including this because she's been a good sport about it. If you are a commissioner and are putting images in a mood board, assume whatever image you put in is going to be referenced directly. Assume it's the only one that's going to be referenced, in fact, because if the next day you don't like the look of a character and your artist points to an image you shared and said you liked that looks exactly like that, and you say, well, I didn't say I wanted it to look exactly like that, you will make your artist want to throw herself into the sun. Thank you for listening. PSA over. It also didn't help that while the cat character had a very clear archetype behind it, the mouse didn't so much. This is sometimes the issue with protagonists, especially ones that are meant to be customizable that you can imprint yourself on. They have to be a little generic, which, like we said, is the enemy. The final sketch is more realistically proportioned than the earlier ones, which worked better when put side by side with the already finished cat anyway. Look for half a second and you can see all sorts of little drawing errors on these two final sketches. Those weren't my concern. The concern was having something that the project lead could look at and approve, and having something that I could use as reference for the next step. Kind of. There are no real rules as to how to set up a page for a character turnaround, but there are heavily recommended guidelines. 1. Keep it simple. White or gray background, no fancy design flourishes. 2. You want high resolution, especially for characters with lots of little details. My default is 11 by 17 inches at 300 dpi, illustration board at print quality. You may need more, but you probably won't. 3. Think about it like a police lineup, which means they're all standing flat against the wall, neutral expression, or at least what you may consider their default expression to be. For the cat, this was a devious smirk. No dynamic poses. No props, not attached to their outfits. For your sake, you will want to set up some lines on the page, at least where the character's feet will land as a start. Put your name on it, put the character's name on it, whatever. Now it's time to start drawing. You may think, hey, I have everything set up. Now I just need to draw the character 3 times. Easy, right? I mean, maybe it'll come naturally to you, but I find that drawing a cool dynamic illustration is a bit of a different skill than trying to draw something like this. Something that needs to be exact and functional, almost like a blueprint. I often struggle with drawings that require me to stay on model, and unless you have a lot of experience in the comic space or animation, if the latter, why are you here? You probably haven't had to think about it that much. Getting this, and I can nitpick them, they're definitely not perfect, required me to create some rules as I was doing these drawings. I started off with the front view because it was easiest, and as I was doing the rough and using my earlier sketches as reference, I started drawing and laying down some guidelines as I went. I wanted to make sure I knew where the eye was in relation to the muzzle, in relation to the ear, so that way it would land the same every time. In the case of the mouse, I wanted to make sure that the ear shape was uniform, this lopsided diamond shape, rather than a circle, which is harder to get looking the same each time. Knowing that these would be turned into 3D models, I wanted to make sure I understood the underlying shapes and bones too. The mouse's head is like a rounded cube, where the cat's is almost like a triangular prism. There are shapes that build on top of and cut into that, but you can still see it, and it can still act as a valuable guideline. Beyond that, it was simple figure drawing, adapted slightly for the anthro of it all, but not as much as you'd think. They still have knees, ankles, and feet the same way we do, just at different proportions. Staring at my own cat while she prowled around the house or referencing other anthro art helped, but I quickly realized it wasn't anything I didn't know how to do already. Once you get the front angle mostly done, this is the time to start adding more big horizontal guidelines, like the one that you added for where the feet are supposed to land, because you're a good listener and I trust you. These guidelines are for you. I included them in my final piece, but that's optional, honestly. You can put as many or as few as you need, though I recommend one for the top of the head, one for the chin, and one for the waistline at a minimum. Beyond that, add as many as you feel like you need. For the cat, I added, amongst others, one at the top of his hat, at his ankle, at the top of his nose, and, let's be mature here, his crotch. These lines are here to keep things consistent from angle to angle. You want to make sure that your character is the same height every time, that his eyes are the same height every time, that his belt is the same height every time. If they are not consistent from angle to angle, you have not made a character turn around, you've just been doodling. As you make these guidelines, be sure to work out other dimensional elements, things like the angle of the hips, the posture, how the collar wraps around the neck, things like that. You want the person you hand this off to have as little confusion as possible. If they don't have to ask you any questions as they're working, you've done a good job. Using these guidelines, you are going to create the side view and potentially 3/4 view if that's on the docket, and you are going to compare to the front view as you go along. Don't be afraid to edit and fuss. Just try to make the guy on the right look exactly like the guy on the left and trust that you've made a solid design. You'll note that in the side view, I didn't draw the arms. You'll see this sometimes in character turnarounds. This is to allow more of the torso to be visible for the animator to reference. Often you will draw the arms side view separate to the character, but not always. Since the design is relatively simple, I omitted it. For the same reason, I included a turnaround without the tail, but included it in another back view so that they could see exactly how the tail hooks up to the backside. Speaking of backsides, if you did the front view correctly, doing the back shouldn't be hard at all. I literally just took the sketch and flipped it, drawing over that directly. There, saved you some time. Well, this seems nearly done. What's left? Turnarounds are almost always used for the animation pipeline, so usually there's not much reason to do anything special in your render. I chose a flat animator's line when finishing to keep things as clear as possible for the modelers, and that's usually standard. Just pick a clean pen, no texture, little variance, and you're good. You may or may not be adding color, and I don't really have any special tips there, aside from that you should keep colors consistent both within the one design and among the different characters. If a character has red on their outfit, every other instance of red should be the exact same shade on them and the other character. Procreate allows you to save colors in their color selector, as do a lot of other drawing apps. I recommend using this if you don't want to be color dropping everything 50+ times. I also heavily discourage using pure black or pure white on a character. It can be done, especially with really stylized characters like SpongeBob, for example, but it tends to look odd on many others. In reality, pure black and pure white are very rare, and in drawings or models, they can cause problems. Pure black has the side effect of making all your line art go away, for example. Then again, that's not a mistake I see often in art. People tend to notice when their line art blinks out of existence. White, on the other hand, here's a question. Are your teeth white? Unless you're a celebrity dropping a bunch of money on veneers, probably not. Same with your eyes too, though I don't think Hollywood plastic surgeons have invented a procedure for that yet. They're probably off white yellow, maybe looking more gray in the right light. Okay, random aside, but this proves my point. I was messing around with mods in Baldur's Gate 3, and there are all these really cool custom eye colors people have modded in. But I kept noticing that some of the modded colors looked really odd compared to some of the default ones. It took me a second, but I realized that it was because the modded ones used pure white for the sclera and as a result didn't look as natural. The default ones, on the other hand, were more of a yellowish gray. That's what you should be aiming for. I was sure to put hexadecimal codes on the page for the 3D artist to reference, but this may not be necessary. I don't even see a lot of people doing this. At this stage, you may add some shading, but by now I was done and ready to turn it in exactly on time. With that, the tutorial is over, and if you liked it, found it useful, or have more resources that you think may be helpful, please comment below. Give a like, give a subscribe, and please let the kind people of this channel know that you would like to hear more from me specifically. I'm just here as a guest star today, but I'm happy to return if they ask. I also have a YouTube channel, Lili Polydora, where I discuss animation and other such things that I like in exhaustive detail. I just put out a giant feature-length video about how to train your dragon that's maybe the best thing I've made ever, featuring hot takes, footage of my vacation to Epic Universe, original art, song covers, and more. If that interests you, pop on over. Otherwise, thanks for watching.